And so today's sixth session, as you sort of saw in the title, is grief and bereavement literacy is on dreaming of the deceased. So people or animal following a loss. And so just introduce the presenters. So I'm going to introduce myself since I'm the presenter. So my name is Dr. Joshua Black, and I work at the BC Center for Palliative Care as the Bereavement Initiative Manager. And so I've had the pleasure to lead the center's bereavement studies since 2021. And as a grief and bereavement researcher, most of my published work prior to working at the center has been on grief dreams, which can be like these dreams of the deceased, and also continuing bonds after loss, and that's including prenatal and pet loss. And so I've really directed a lot of my time at continuing to raise awareness on dreams after loss by creating the website griefdreams.ca and running the Instagram account at Grief Dreams, and also hosting the Grief Dreams podcast. And so it's just passion that leads me to this area and to want to continue to just raise awareness on something that a lot of people just don't know much about. And so additionally, today we will have some people share their lived experience. And so we have Sherry and Kathy with us today that I get to sort of talk to. I'm looking forward to that. So today's session, we'll have a 15-minute educational presentation by myself, and then we'll have some Q&A, and then we'll have discussion with the people with lived experience, and then followed by Q&A. And so the learning objectives today will be really to discuss the central findings of academic research in dreams of the deceased, describe the issues the bereaved commonly voice in relation to some of these dreams, and describe how dreams can be really seen as a tool to really help support the bereaved. And I know it's only a 15-minute session, and these things can go like 2 hours to really get some type of understanding on them. So just know that this is just bits and pieces. There's so much more to say. So the first question is like, why should we care? And I think people just need to understand that it's a very common experience during bereavement. It can have a really huge impact, positively or negatively, within the grieving process, which we'll talk about. And it's really common to see within our popular culture. So if you watch a lot of different movies, you'll see they come up within the character's grieving process in many ways. And even Paul McCartney from the Beatles sort of spoke about how his song "Let It Be" was actually from a grief dream he had after his mom died, and he was having a very hard time. And his mom sort of he had a dream of his mom basically saying, "It's going to be okay, just let it be." And so then he woke up and he wrote that song. And fun fact, his mother's name is Mary. So I didn't know that. So that's what that's coming from. And so the bereaved can have a lot of questions and concerns on the topic, and yet many of the people who support the bereaved really do not have the training to really talk about it, and really haven't been seen a lot of the information that's come out. And just I wanted to mention, when we did the interviews with some of the bereaved here at the center, one in particular really caught my eye, and it was an individual who suffered the death of her sister. And she started to have dreams of her, and it actually really scared her because she didn't know it was common. She thought something was wrong with her because she was dreaming of her deceased sister. And so she then went to a therapist who also didn't have any information for her to really help normalize this. And so what she ended up doing was to really search online. And, that's not always the best option because there's so much information out there. And not a lot of it's based on, the research. And so she then sort of spoke about how some of the stuff was troubling that she was seeing on what that means within the grieving process and stuff. And so if she finally landed on something more positive that she would cling to. So that's why it's important that we sort of raise awareness. And then also, when there is limited understanding, people who support the bereaved just may avoid the topic. And there may be a lot of information and a lot of things that could sort of really work, that you can work through with the individual. And so to not switch the topic, but to engage in it and to sort of provide a space for it to be shared. And so there are different forms of grief dreams after loss. So there's the dreams that people have that don't have the deceased present or mention them. There are dreams that have the deceased not present again, but other people will mention them within the imagery. So that could be another character, it could be God, an angel, something like that. Then you have these dreams where the deceased is actually present in the dream itself. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And so,
Lord.
oh, can we mute? Let's see. All right, I did it. Okay, so looking at dreams of the deceased, just how common is it? I think this is just really helps normalize the experiences that people can have. And so just looking at adults, just even my own data that I've completed. So after a partner or spousal loss, it was 86% had at least one dream of the deceased within a year or two. And then after pet loss, 78% within 6 months after the loss had at least one dream. And then after miscarriage, 57% were dreaming of the baby that they never actually saw. And then you have children. One study was done that showed 55% were having dreams of the deceased parent. And so you can sort of see by those numbers that it's a pretty common experience. And yet, people really don't think it's important, or something to really understand. And I always wonder why. And I know one of the reasons is that a lot of people need research to sort of validate that something is real. And since a lot of these dreams that people do have tend to be more, I guess, hidden, unless you ask, they really try not to share. They don't share, especially in Western society. And so that could be also it. And so now that research is coming out, maybe hopefully more people will start asking these questions. But I also understand that Western culture just has a very poor understanding about dreams in general and dreams after loss. And so as I continue to learn more and more about the impacts of Canada's history of colonization and exploitation of Indigenous land and populations, I do feel that maybe one of the reasons our culture does downplay these dreams is because Indigenous peoples value them, and they have, continue to. And so when we think about grief and bereavement literacy, it's just really acknowledging that many of the ways we understand what is normal in grief is really based on a colonial systems in which we are operating in. And I'm learning more and more each day about where my biases lie. So that much of what we really know is really from a Western colonized viewpoint. So hopefully that this is an opportunity to reflect on and understand and normalize these dream experiences in the grieving process. And looking at types of dream themes that can happen. So just in some of my own research, after partner and spousal loss, it's very similar also after pet loss, that people can have these dreams of the deceased, dead, dying, or ill. You said 35% stated they had at least one of those. Also acting and deceased acting and speaking in ways that was very upsetting to them. Then you have these dreams where the deceased is seen healthy and happy, and also even acting and speaking in ways of that's actually very comforting to the dreamer. And if you put the two, I guess, positive themes together and the negative themes together, what you get is that most people, if they do dream of the deceased, it's more likely they're going to have a positive, comforting dream theme than a negative one. So you can see 92% had a positive and 44% had a negative theme. And so it normalizes those and also normalizes having those negative dreams of the deceased within the grieving process. But what's interesting is that 95% of the people who reported a negative theme also reported a positive one. And so one of the theories there is as we work through and our grief gets integrated, so more and more, we'll continue to have the dreams will turn into something more positive. But dreams in general, we don't know much about, and most people said don't know much about. And so just give you an understanding of why it's unusual to have these positive dreams based on Western research. So dreams in general can reflect the dreamer's waking life, so which is called the continuity hypothesis, which is really based on sort of Western research. And other cultures do recognize this in some ways, but they can also have these spiritual interpretations of these dreams. And so in general, dreams can be passive or they can be active. So passive being that what you watch, how you feel during the day can be incorporated into your dreams. But they also can be very active and they can actually help problem solve some of the things you're actually working through. So in general, just dream research has found that as your mood changes, your dreams also change. So if you're in a very positive state and then it turns to a negative state, your dreams are going to correlate with that change. And so in general, most people will have negative dreams just because a lot of times we go to bed anxious, just with everything that goes on in everyday life. But what we found also is that after trauma, one's dreams become even more consistently negative. So after someone has died, one would think you'd have a lot more negative dreams. And so it's very surprising that when the deceased is in the imagery, it's actually more positive than negative. And so one of the questions lies that people come is, why am I having the negative dreams? And so just by understanding a little bit of just that Western research, how we would expect you to have negative dreams because you're going through the grieving process and it can reflect some of those emotions. And just in some of my own research, post-traumatic symptoms and unresolved feelings of guilt and blame had an impact on those dreams being negative. And so, but I do want to mention that it's important to ask about people's dreams because people may be fearful of them and they may restrict their sleep. And sleep is so important for just integrating our loss, that it's also really good to know that if people are having these difficult dreams, how we can sort of work with those. And I feel that we can learn a lot from these negative dreams through maybe what our mind is trying to work through, and also what people are actually thinking it means. And so just here's an example from a widow's dream experience. And so it basically says the deceased spouse basically came to her. Basically, she asked him where he has been and why he had let me think he has been dead all this time. She says, I get angrier and angrier as he tells me that he faked his death and it was all just a plan to get the money from the business and insurance. Then now he wants to resume our relationship again. I tell him that I have moved on with my life and that now I'm in a new relationship and that I'm happy. I tell him that I can't go back in time to be with him again. He gets very angry and tells me that the real reason he is back is because he wants all the money that I inherited. That if I give it to him, he'll leave me alone. I get very upset telling him he's a mean, terrible, heartless person to do something like that to me. And so by looking at this, I won't go through too much, but like there's some things that you could sort of maybe ask about in waking life that may be going on. Was he a mean and heartless person? The answer is no. So it's very different than what one would expect. If this was like a quote unquote like a visitation for the individual, and the individual thought it was a visitation, and so it's very hard for her to sort of hold on to this dream because she had an idea that all dreams of the deceased are visitations. And so and it could be, I don't say, I don't really know, but we can look at it as like just Western researchers sort of say maybe these negative dreams, maybe they're reflecting some of the emotions we're trying to deal with still. And so you can sort of see that she started a new relationship. He wants to be with her, and as a widow, it can be very. I would think it'd be very difficult to start a new relationship and love again after the person you love has died. And then the other big piece here is he talks about the money that she got. And when you ask her about the money, what's interesting is she said that that was the hardest thing that she's ever had to deal with, and she still continues to deal with because she feels it's so unjust that he got to work all this. He worked so hard for it, and she's the one that gets to enjoy it. So she has this injustice of being able to even utilize the money, and she's probably using the money on also the new relationship. So there's some things that one could be able to talk about through the dream imagery to sort of see where someone is at in waking life. And then why have I not had a dream? So this is a very interesting question that you sort of get a lot, and people can sort of complicate their grief with how they answer that. So some people will say, if they're spiritual, they may say that, oh, maybe they haven't crossed over, maybe something's wrong, maybe they don't love me anymore. So I've heard all of these different things. And other people just get jealous because they want one. And so just through some research I've completed in multiple studies, dream recall has been the most important factor in understanding who dreams of the deceased. And so people who dream in general more are more likely to have these dreams of the deceased. And so what it says that people are probably dreaming of the deceased more than they're probably actually remembering them. And that's its own sort of interesting another chat about like, why are we remembering some dreams over others? But there was a study done by Wright in 2013 who basically said that, who found that 50% of those who did not have a dream wanted one. And so there's a lot of people who just haven't had a dream yet, and there's this longing to have one. And so dreams can help with the grieving process in different ways. I don't have time to go through all the functions of these dreams, but trauma recovery is one of them, emotional regulation, and also grief support. And one of the ways that it can happen is that it allows for these continuing bonds to be present. And so continuing bond is when the bereaved continues to develop a bond with the deceased. And so, and that sort of relationship has been shown to help in grief recovery. And a couple of studies I did also show that too. But these dreams can be very powerful. They can provide advice. They can also, to be able to see them in a healthy way when the last time you saw them was sick, it can also help restore faith in one's religion or spiritual beliefs. And a lot of times, and one of the most important ones I see across cultures is the presence of love, being in the presence of love where the deceased is there. And here are just some examples of just being in that love. So here's one my husband deceased came and sat down by my bed and said, I've been to the end of time and back, and you know what? I still love you. Here's another one from a woman who actually never met her father. So she died, or he died when she was in womb. And so she utilized these dreams as a way of connection with them. And so this is one of the dreams she had. My father tells me in the dream, I love you. I see you every day. You are so beautiful. Then for pet loss, here's one from my dog and I were at the park playing with a ball. He kept running towards me. It almost looked like he was smiling. And then another one, my cat appeared in my room and hopped onto my bed and cuddled with me while we watched television. Very beautiful. And so there's differences in dream themes that you can sort of see when you look at like the different loss types. And so for spousal loss, you have these more romantic encounter dreams. You can also sort of get advice for parenting if there was a parent that died. If a child sort of has died, there can be differences in that. And if they died when they're really young, you can sometimes see the person will see them as they would age in waking life. So if they died at age 2, they may dream about them in 2 years at age 4. And there's also a lot of play, which I think is beautiful. And you said also with pet loss, there's a lot of play. And with pets too, it's like a lot of times it's just walking or doing some of the routine things that one would do. With parents, you can also sort of see the parent maybe decrease in age. If they died when they're older, they may come at a younger age. And with miscarriage, it's interesting is you sort of see them at all different ages. And the ones that were actually older in the teen years, they were the ones that actually spoke, and they spoke to the parent, basically that it wasn't their fault. And so it's just interesting to sort of see how these dreams can also reduce some guilt that one may be carrying. And these dreams can also change over time. So in the beginning, when one's dealing with one's grief and trauma, what it seems like some of this content is really focused on is helping one through that difficult time of their grief. And even though grief doesn't go away, it sort of doesn't become as heavy to hold. And in those beginning moments, these dreams can really be very useful, especially the positive ones. But what's interesting is as you can sort of hold the capacity for your grief rather than being like kind of dragged by it, the dreams just don't stop. So they can continue on to help us remember and be a part of that. And then in other, like, I guess, stressful times, people have mentioned that these dreams come back in many ways. So if you're going through divorce or during the pandemic, people have had these dreams, and also at end of life, you can have these dreams where it really helps you with the transition from life to death. And then for the cultural and religious perspectives, so people can have very different perspectives on these dreams, and there's gonna be some cultures that really encourage talking about them. So Western culture, we're not there yet. And so the bereaved can really feel isolated and fearing judgments of other people. And so a lot of times they don't share, as I sort of said. And also within many different religions, it can be very confusing because people don't talk about them, or I haven't seen really a lot of maybe some of the research and understanding, like that there's so many different variations of these dreams that can happen, and some are more profound than others. And I just in my own time within like the Christian space, I know some of the pastors have said, some of these dreams, the deceased can visit you. Other pastors said, no, that's the devil in disguise. Other people saying, I don't know. So there's this conflict. So it's always great to know where someone is when they sort of share these dreams on their perspectives. And then like with the Buddhist culture, there's some people that believe that if you have a dream of the deceased, it's a sign that they haven't reincarnated, and that can be a negative thing for them, even if they're saying very loving words. But they can have profound effects on sort of our belief system and how we sort of see our faith. And even I remember I had a couple of people that are atheists that basically didn't believe in an afterlife, and then they had this dream, and that was very profound and different because many of these dreams can be more vivid than most other dreams. But then they sort of realized there must be something more, and so they don't know what it is, but it switched their belief system. And so just wrapping up on sort of looking at this sort of literature, what can we do to provide support? So just give permission to talk about it. Like it's one of the things that I'm always honored to be able to do, because I know most people don't get a chance. And so I hear a lot of dreams for the first time from people who just never really got a chance to share them yet. And so it says understanding that these people, there's a fear of sharing it. And so if we can just ask and engage and listen, what more could he ask for? And so when you do ask about it. You just want to normalize it and really validate those experiences that they had, and just ask how they're feeling about that and what their thoughts on it. It's not about interpreting people's dreams. It's really about just sitting with the grieving process, and this is part of it. You can always ask questions on the experience, as I sort of talked about, but really try not to interpret. And then really thank them for sharing. I think that's an important part of it all, because it allows them to be able to want to share again when it happens. And you can also set on my website, there is a dream builder worksheet that you can also use to just discuss dreams that they want to have. I think that's also a powerful tool just to increase conversations on a topic. Even if someone doesn't have a dream, they really want one, you can always ask them, what dream would you want to have? And so there's a lot of information there on what they sort of do moving forward. And so, as I sort of said, like, to learn more, you can go to the Grief Dreams podcast to hear personal stories, and also the website griefdreams.ca. So here's some academic publications with the information it came from. And then we'll now open it up to questions. If you have any questions, we have about 5 minutes. I'll see if there's anything in the chat. Here's a question. I know this is a short presentation. If you want to learn more on the topic, where could we look? The best place is on my website, just because I have common questions answered on there. And so that'll be a really great way to learn a little bit more. And just really just asking. So if you're part of a religion of some sort, feel free to ask some of the pastors of their thoughts on it. And if you need any more like information, I can also send that to you. Question, can you go back to the publication slide? All that information is also on my website, so you can also sort of see it there. And the link for the podcast is also on my website. You can also go there. And what about when someone dreams of the deceased and okay, what about when someone dreams of the deceased and they're the one that is angry, but the cause isn't clear? So if I said like you got to know more of the, I think, the fuller story of what's going on here. So if the dreamer is angry at the deceased, just understand to sort of look at those emotions and see, is there any kind of anger within you? If there's not, it may just be something else, something different. Something could have been triggered for you that basically is just using that dream as a symbol for maybe anger you have against something else. But there could be other things. But so like that's why dreams are a very fascinating field. There's different layers to it, and different cultures will have different understanding. So it's also understanding your own and whoever is dream that is, like their own understanding of what dreams are, to try to gain some sense of it. But what I love about dreams is even if you don't get the meaning the first time, it's going to happen again and again if you're not getting the information. So then that's one way you can do it. And then we have a couple left. Okay, hand up. Sherry, do you have a question?
I'm just trying to unmute myself. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you this comes about because I love the way you put the cultural part in. Because right now, after my father just passing last month, the end of last month, uh, um, I've learned so much since I've been here, and it's so crazy how remember how fate's brought everything's going along and fate things coming across, and I learned so much about dreams and how it's not a fear. I think when it comes to cultural and people talk about sharing their dreams, it's not a fear. A lot of it, if I'm learning, dreams are prophesized through people like, especially in my culture. We have a prophet, and his name is Nate, and you know what that interpreted means, the dreamer. So it's a lot about not fear of sharing a dream. It's about sometimes dreams are gifts for you to keep to yourself, and there's some dreams that are meant to share. And, like I said, dreams have prophesized our culture for years. It still is. Like it's much in tune. It has come, especially when it comes to grieving. And I could go on about this, but thanks for pointing that out.
No, I like that. I think said like that information.
Yeah.
Sure. On my side really came from a lot of like the Western society and how people portray dreams. Because a lot of times, if someone has a religious belief, they may think it's a visitation and they share it, and the person they share it with basically downplays it, or vice versa. Someone's not religious, they have a dream that's profound, and they share it, and someone tries to put their religion on it. And so a lot of people just keep it within themselves. But yeah, I think it's amazing when cultures do allow that sharing, and that there's so much information there, and you can sort of just feel that it's normalized. Like this is part of the way of grief in many ways. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing more since you're you're going to be coming up next. And so I know there's a couple other questions.
Yep.
There's a couple other
Yes, yes,
questions.
yes. I can't wait.
There'll be another, I know there's more questions. I don't have time to sort of go that. We have to move over to the lived experience, but I'll definitely check those out, and feel free to email me too. I'm happy to answer any questions after this. Once again, so thank you. So for those people who are here today to share their lived experience. And so we have Sherry and Kathy with us today. And so I'd like to sort of start by just each asking you about your own loss story and how dreams sort of played a role within your grieving process. And we'll start, since Sherry, you spoke up. First, let's start with you and just talk about, I know you have different losses, but maybe, you know, like ones that you want to talk about today and how dreams were a part of that process.
Like I said, dreams, especially when it comes to cultural support and whatnot, is very much so. It comes to your dreams, and I was told that we dream every day, but we don't remember. And but what I've within the last month and a half of losing my father, dreams have become so profound within myself. And on previous times, I'd lost my brother about in 2019, and we were very close. And he was same place where same town as my hometown here in Fort Providence, Northwest Territories. And before we had kind of had a little we always loved each other, but you know, brothers and sisters squabble, and we forgave each other, but we just didn't spend the time that we needed together. So when he passed, I knew he loved me. I talked to him like millions after that, because it was like 3 years before he passed that we had a little falling out, which was a minor, and we forgave each other. Right? It was something stupid, and we got over it. But to me, in the back of my head, that was a guilt that I felt. And when I arrived the day to his house, I had a dream, and he was there on top of the stairs saying, come come on in, sis, you know where you can stay, you know where your room is. And my niece said, you know what, kids in the basement, adults upstairs. And it's amazing how that in itself had given me so much comfort, and realizing that dreams are a tool in life that we have to carry around in our bag of medicine of life here. And you know what, every dream, things happen for a reason, and like they say, there's negative and positive. And also I've also learned too, when you go to sleep and very mad at somebody or something, you tend to have dreams about them too, in a negative way. So a lot of time, but then again, I try to go to sleep like my grandmother says, you know, I remember a good sleep, say thank you 3 times before you go to sleep. That's why you go to sleep at peace, and when you're peaceful, and that's when you dream. But that night when I spent the night with my brothers, I mean, I've never felt so much comfort in my life. It was something that it was given to me, I think, a gift that I had to, and I told my children that night, and that night we all slept well. So it wasn't just wasn't just for me. It was for my family, his kids. I told his wife. I told, and that night we all slept well. But yes, I could tell you so much more, and I love. Yeah, that gave me so much comfort. Still thank him to this day.
Wow, that is so beautiful that you had that experience. And I love how you shared it with other people, right? Like I think, you know, like there's something beautiful about dreams, how they're not just for us, as you're saying, like they can be for the community in itself, who maybe have maybe not had a chance to have something like that yet. And so when you shared your dreams, did you hear anything back from anyone else about any dreams they've had?
My Actually, I did, and the same thing. They said my nephew had said Auntie's coming home, and the weirdest thing about that was like 2 days before my brother passed, and because he was talking about me, right? So it was he said he missed me and stuff, um, and he tried phoning me, and but we kept on playing telephone tag. And then it was 2 days after he passed. So it was kind of crazy when I repeated my dream to my brother and his children. I mean, my brother's wife and his children. But they were like, "Whoa, whoa!" And it was kind of how weird that I had the dream of him and him wanting me to come back to visit. Yeah, but he had a dream that he was coming home to visit 2 days before he passed. So, and it's premonition, but in a way, it gave me comfort knowing he was still thinking of me just before he passed, and knowing my nephews and my nieces and all his grandchildren were there, and it was a comfort that they felt. Even my sister-in-law said, like you said, she never had a dream, and she still hasn't had a dream to this day, and that's been since 2019. And 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 I kind of say, like, maybe it's his. He was at peace. That's why he's not. He's in a good place, right? And that's our cultural belief, right? And but then a lot of times we also go on. There's another thing in our belief system that if you grieve for them too long, then they're not at rest. And sometimes dreams. That's why they come into the dreams to tell you they're okay. You're okay, and could cry and could worrying about them, right? It's kind of a way of letting them go in subcultures, especially mine.
I can see that. That's very interesting. And you're right, it helps can minimize the length of time that maybe one grieves for, because the impact that one of those positive dreams or message dreams can really have on the grieving process.
And also wanted to
That's beautiful.
add, whoever, especially in my identity culture, because like I said, I'm from the Northwest. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. It's almost like a universal belief in some of all the Indigenous people I've worked with and came across when we came to this subject. But it was always like I said, a tool. And the thing was, it's dreams when you, especially within families that have lost something, is talked about and shared. But it's within our family, and it's our way of, like, that's why I learned, like, because I was talking to my uncles, which my dad's younger brothers, and he was the oldest, and he told me, be careful what you tell your dreams, because some dreams um are your gift, right? Because gifts come in dreams too. And in my culture, there's different kind of healers, right? And that's where healers get their gifts, and people get other gifts that creator is only meant for you. But you can tell those dreams from the other normal dreams, especially when it comes to grieving. And I think the more I think about it, like, and dreams is a big thing in my culture, but it's almost try to put that in the medicine wheel of life is how they put the grieving process in there. It's so much entwined because in our dreams they're still alive, and that's how they come to us, right? And still to this day, we all, like, even for my brother that passed away 4 years ago, we still share it. It's a healing thing for sure. And it also sends messages that we don't know. It's amazing. All I
I,
can say.
I love it. I love that perspective too. And I think it's beautiful that the dreams are shared. Personally, I never had that within my own family. And so it's nice to sort of be able to see that, and that there's a different way that you can approach dreams, within your own family, and also within the grieving process as a way, as a tool. So thank you so much, Sherry, for sharing that, and providing us some wisdom also within the culture. And so next we have Kathy to come on, and just, yeah, if you want to talk about a little bit about your grieving process, and then how the dreams played in your life too.
Sure. Thank you. My primary grief is related to the death of my son, who was 21 years old when he passed in 2017. And it was a drug-related death. So it was sudden and traumatic, and there was lots of stuff to work through. And it's a tough thing, I think, particularly in our colonial culture, when it's associated with many forms of trauma-related deaths, but death by suicide or drug-related harms, there's that added layer of stigma that makes it much harder to talk about, and therefore you internalize it, and that can come out in dreams. I know for myself, I experienced a number of different types of dreams, and some of them in the positive category that Joshua was talking about, and some in the negative category. And there's definitely learnings that I took away from all of them, and kind of life-changing perspective shifts. So for me, I found when my son first passed, like in the first few days after he passed, I remember hearing through my children that their dad, who I'm no longer married to, had experienced Tristan coming to him in his dreams. And I was like so jealous, like why not me? Why not me? And a few days after that, I had what I refer to as my first visitation, which feels very, very different from any other kind of dream, where my son came to me and he was very physical. Like I could touch him, I could smell him, I could hold him, I could engage all of the senses. And he kind of did his little funny dance that he used to do because he was pretty goofy. And he just said to me, "I'm still me, Mom. See, I'm still me." And he gave me a hug. And then he said he had to go away. And that was my first visitation dream. Earlier on in the coming months after his death, particularly up to the first year, I also experienced a number of nightmares, which were very different. I don't consider those visitations. Those were absolutely, I'm very convinced that was me working through the trauma associated not just with his death, but with his life as he was experiencing addiction. And those were terrible. And I am happy to say I haven't had one of those dreams for some time, probably a few years now, which again kind of confirms that was me working through some stuff. And what I have continued to have all the way through with some regularity is just him being in my dreams, as if he continues to be part of my life, because he is. And in so many of these dreams, what is interesting to me is he is a child. Almost always. I think, he comes to me closer to the age that he was at the time of his death occasionally. But more often it's just as a child, along with my other daughters or whatever else is going on in the dream. Sometimes I'll just, be looking at a bunch of people and notice, oh, Tristan's over there. So I think to me that just reaffirms that he continues to be a part of my life after death, as he was during his life.
Wow, thank you for sharing. It's interesting to see the different types of dreams and how you categorize them. And you sort of mentioned those nightmares. I know you said you wrote a book and you had that within there. And there's the one dream that I remember you shared just to me before. I don't know if you could read that and like your understanding of it, because I think it provides people a way to how to look at a negative dream.
Sure, I did. I'll give me a moment to find it. It won't take long, but I
Okay.
didn't have it set up. I did, as part of my grieving process, and very much part of my healing process, I did write a book called Here With You, a memoir of love, family, and addiction. And that was published last fall. And I did write about, after talking to you, I was thinking, oh, I wish I had written about my visitation dream in there, because that was so hopeful. But what I did write is about my nightmare, because that was very present to me, and it is going to be great.
And as Kathy sort of looks at this, if anyone has any questions they want to put in the chat for either Kathy or Sherry to be able to ask them, we'll have some time afterwards. So I think it's just really amazing too on understanding that there are some of these dreams can really feel really different, like they're more vivid and real. Feels like you're in waking life, and other ones feels like a dream. And the other ones can be very nightmarish and images and stuff too. So I think it's just really interesting to understand that there is a variety of types of dreams that are occurring in people's lives, and the negative ones is usually the ones that can cause a lot of stress within the sleeping process, in the grieving process too. And so hopefully, like Kathy, if you're ready, did you find it yet or no?
No, why? Like, yeah. It's like it's not. It's like it's gone from my book. Hold on. No. I'm sorry. I didn't. You put me on the spot here. I wasn't.
Hey, no, it's fine. You can't find it. You can't find it.
Yeah, but that's terrible.
I will say, I'll just continue on. So I will say that not everyone remembers their dreams. And so like Sherry did talk about, like that, some people aren't, or they haven't had that dream yet, and there's different like frequencies that people do dream. And so you see that just in the research too, that on average is around 1 or 2 dreams a week that people are remembering in Western culture anyways. And part of that's
Got it
probably
now.
nice. I'll just finish this up. And part of that's probably because they devalue it, but the more you actually value dreams, the more you're going to remember them. So we are all dreaming during the night, but that's what the interesting thing is, what dreams we remember and the importance of those. Okay, Kathy, you're up.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. It's not too long. This was at Christmas time, and I was very stressed. It was my first Christmas without my son, so it was a pretty stressful time. A few days after Christmas, I dreamed I was searching for Tristan in a crack house, trying to find him, to bring him back to recovery, to save him. I knew if I didn't find him soon, he would die. Only I knew where he was, so it was all on me. In my dream, the crack house looked like a party scene from Breaking Bad. Emaciated bodies lying amidst garbage, people shooting up or half-heartedly having sex, or just staring at me with vacant eyes. I walked over these bodies, desperately searching for Tristan. I stumbled from room to room, growing more panicked with every second until I finally found him. I reached out to where he lay in a corner of the room, his eyes gazing lifelessly at me, his body already cold. Pain exploded and I woke up. I sifted through the nightmare in search of reality urgently, as if Tristan's life depended on it. Oh, I thought to myself, taking deep breaths to slow my pounding heart. It's okay. I'm okay. He's already dead. And that was the worst part, not the nightmare in itself. That wasn't so different from the many dreams I'd already had. What scared me most was the feeling of deep relief I had when I woke and remembered Tristan was dead. And then I felt anguish and guilt for being relieved. I spent most of that day in bed crying, feeling like a terrible mother. I thought that somehow I must subconsciously be relieved that Tristan was gone. Yes, some things seemed easier now than when Tristan was in the depths of his addiction. It was easier for me to manage my own pain than to watch him in pain. But that wasn't what my relief had been about. It would make sense in a way to be relieved that I didn't have to fear for him or try to save him anymore. But that wasn't quite right either. All day, I wrestled with that feeling of relief until I finally understood it. I hadn't been relieved that Tristan was dead in my dream. I had been relieved when I woke that I didn't have to live through his death again, that I hadn't somehow been swept back to that moment of his death. Instead, I was here, months later, still in a sea of pain, but inching my way toward an unknown shore. That was a legitimate relief.
Wow. Thank you. I always you feel the heaviness of that, and also how hard it would have been, that the death and the process of grieving the death of your son. And like that dream really showcases that and how you explained it. So I thank you for finding it, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think there's so much to process in our grief. And I think, I'm so grateful for people like you and other people who create opportunities for us to share, because that's how we process. Like, we process by working things out. It's hard to do in isolation.
I agree. I agree. And the more knowledge we have, the easier it can be as we sort of try to figure out what grief is and what we're going to be experiencing as we move forward, and what the family and friends and those who support us to be able to provide that better space and to ask those questions. And so I'll give it up. We have about 5 minutes. And so if there's any questions that the people who are here that want to sort of ask Kathy or Sherry about their experiences, either raise your, I guess, Zoom hand, or you can put it into the chat. A lot of people are saying thank you. Let's see. There's a couple of questions that I think are more for me, but I guess I could sort of say them. As a researcher, finding that are there more people studying grief and dreams? I feel that there are, especially when I started a couple of years ago. And I think just as word gets out, people will gravitate towards some of the stuff like that you can study it, like it is possible. And so I think with awareness and anything, more and more people just validate it and will look for it. So yeah, I have seen a couple other people's research that has popped up since I began. And we're doing actually some research within the center, and Sherry is a part of that, where we're actually able to include some dream questions for some of the bereaved individuals that we're actually studying. So yeah, so there's more to that, and then we're going to learn more and more as we sort of move forward, which is really nice. Another question, could you clarify what you meant by the more you think about dreams, the more you have them? And so, yeah, so the more you validate, or the more you think about dreams, the more you write them down, you're basically telling yourself, within our culture anyways, Western culture, that they're important. And so the mind will then remember more of them for you because you're saying they're important. And so the opposite is true. If you don't want the dreams, research has shown that you can actually reduce your frequency level by not thinking about them, not writing them down, not talking about them. And so because the frequency is 1 to 2 a week, that's actually just based on like a culture that doesn't value dreams. And so like the more you value those dreams, the more you write them down, even like listen to this talk, you're saying that they're important, and then your mind will provide you more moments that are important to you. And so you'll be able to remember and capture some of those. I will say that there is 10% of the population just that doesn't remember their dreams. And so there's nothing that they'll be able to kind of do to be able to increase that. And so there's going to be that small subsect that just doesn't remember their dreams, even though they are having them.
I just wanted to add to that. Hello, maybe?
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to mention uh, Joshua too, and this has been not just actually, I've done a little bit of research previously when I was going to UBC and it, but dreams and indigenous culture and whatnot. But as myself, and from speaking with my grandmother, who was a healer, I mean, as you will, and my family that I grew up with my traditional beliefs. A lot of times, people do not remember their dreams because it's clouded. Your dreams are clouded, whether it's alcohol, drugs, even prescription pills. And as you notice, and I myself with my own journey through addictions and whatnot, the
It looks like
Yeah,
I think
the
we
audio.
lost Sherry. Could be a bad internet connection. But yeah, I was really enjoying what she was talking about. Oh, are you back, Sherry? We lost you, and I personally couldn't hear you in the last section. So I'm not sure. I can't. Yeah, I still can't hear you.
I couldn't hear anything either.
And so it's really interesting to know about the drugs and alcohol, how it can cloud your mind. I think that's really interesting too. Just in her own culture, but also you sort of see that too with the dreams. We do have another question. If Sherry comes back, we'll see. This is an interesting question actually, and Kathy, you may have an idea on this too. Do only the dreams we remember help in the grieving process? So what are your thoughts on that? Because we remember certain dreams, but there's going to be other dreams of the deceased that we just don't remember. Do you think there's healing within those dreams also, even though you don't consciously recollect like seeing them or being with them?
Yeah, just from my personal perspective, I would give more credibility to yours and your research, but I absolutely think that we heal based on our dreams, whether we remember them or not, or maybe heal is not even the right word. We can heal, but we are impacted by our dreams. I think that our dreams help us to sort things out, and awake refreshed or with a slightly different feeling or connection. I don't, for my part, I think that we do. I think that our dreams are one of the ways in which we work things out, whether we remember them or not. So I think they can absolutely be healing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like we don't really know, since we can't see the dreams that we're having, what they are. But I would think so too. And they may just be a different part of helping us work through the grieving process in many ways.
Yeah.
But
I think we
yeah,
have the feelings, right? Like if I would imagine that when we're dreaming, we're experiencing those same feelings, whether we remember them or not. And then those feelings are more familiar to us. They create a memory of sorts, whether we actually remember them in our mind or not.
yeah, I think future research would be really interesting to explore some of that as we move forward. But yeah, I think that's a possibility for sure. And so we're coming to a close. And so I just want to thank basically Kathy and Sherry for being here today and opening their hearts to share their story and being vulnerable and just really talking about those dream experiences. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully everyone here did too. And so we just ask that you do complete a short survey. So we're going to put a link in the chat. And so once again, there's a registration for our next session in the series on basically sleep after loss, and it's scheduled for March 19th at the same time. And if you want to be notified of any other sessions on this series, you can subscribe to our newsletter, and we always have information on there. And so our aim is to provide a copy of the presentation recording, session, summary notes, and anything else within the next 7 working days. So just watch your email for this information and visit the center's website for more information on upcoming ECHO sessions. So once again, thank you for attending. We really appreciate you being here. And thank you again for our presenters. So Kathy and Sherry,
Thank you for
really
inviting
appreciate
me.
it.